So delighted to be joined today by the writer, director, producer of the Driftless, Tim Connery. Hi Tim, how are you doing?
Good, Andy. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for taking the time today to talk to me. So first off, congratulations on the Driftless, sorry. I was lucky enough to get a screener, thoroughly enjoyed it. Um, for you, let's kind of go back to the start. How did the story of the Driftless develop for you?
So, obviously, well, I guess not so obviously. I'm from uh, the area featured in the film called the Driftless. So,
Mhm.
obviously, I was born and raised here. Lived most of my life in the Driftless area, the southern portion of it, which is in northeastern Iowa in the United States. And so the Driftless area, to give you some context, is a portion of the United States, the northern Midwest, along the Mississippi River, the northern part of the Mississippi River in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa, that basically somehow avoided glaciation. So the glaciers just missed that area. So whereas most of the Midwest was completely flattened by the glaciers thousands and thousands of years ago, the driftless area avoided it. Thus
Mm,
it's called the driftless because it avoided glacial drift. Right.
okay.
So uh, it is a very unique part of the United States,
Mhm.
especially when people who have, especially in the states, have a certain idea of what the Midwest looks like, and it's very flat, it's very boring, a lot of farming, and when I bring people who haven't come to this area before, they're always shocked at how different it is and
Mm,
how unique it is. So being from this area and knowing it, quite well, I just thought, it was kind of a unique opportunity to kind of take some stories that were kind of based in this area and bring them to, because if people in the United States don't really know about this area or are surprised to hear about its backstory, well, I would think the rest of the world would be as well, right? And I guess to give some context, like this area can sometimes look like the Pacific Northwest or kind of like a mountainous area. Like that's how different this region is. There's huge cascading bluffs, lakes, all sorts of interesting geography, and when conceiving stories, having a good sense of place and geography, and I think that's always a great basis for telling a story, right? Having a
mhm.
great location. So
Yeah.
I always knew I wanted to do something around it, and going back to the pandemic, like a lot of movies that are dropping right now, a lot of indie movies that are dropping right now were conceived in some way, shape, or form, whether they were written or shot during the pandemic. It was
Mm,
you know terrible time, but it definitely forced a lot of creatives to kind of hunker down and make the best of it, which is what I tried to do as well.
mm,
I was coming off of my second feature film, which was called Death to Metal, very like schlocky, campy slasher horror movie, and I kind of wanted to cleanse my palate from that a little bit. Like it was really
mm,
fun to make, but I just wanted to make some more serious stories again, which was kind of what I did more so in my 20s. And uh, there's always a problem though with filmmaking, and that's money, right?
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
my background is, I've again lived in Iowa most of my life. Um, I went to film school in Chicago, and that's where I got my formal training back in the late aughts. But you know, I come from a middle class, lower middle class background. Money's always been an issue when making these things, and my first two
Mm,
features were primarily crowdfunded, right? Um, kind of a cheat code that a lot of filmmakers make. Well, unless you have names or you're a name, crowdfunding can still be very challenging, right? You know, raising
Mm.
$15,000 or $25,000 for a feature isn't anything, right? You know,
Yeah.
uh, on a normal indie feature, that kind of money can be just like one line item. It can be one, cast member coming out for a week. It's a drop in the bucket. So one of the things I wanted to try to remedy with this project was that question, like how do I continue to self fund this next project, because that's important to me just in terms of having creative control,
Yeah.
but how do I also make the movie that I want to, because I'd be lying if I didn't say that my first two features uh, were hurt from the lack of funds, right? Whether it
Okay.
was not having a traditional sound mix, or you know not having a proper color grade, or not having access to the union talent or whatever. So
Mhm.
um, you know I was like, well, there's only so many ways to do this, right? I can get a bunch of credit cards, take out a big loan against my mortgage, and max out all the credit cards, and incur all this debt, and just like go for it and hope that it hits and we at least get our money back. Um,
Mhm.
or the smarter path, which is films are historically a very risky investment for
Mhm.
everybody, right? Like you pretty much gotta treat the money that you're spending on movies like this like you're just lighting it on fire, right? Like the chance of you getting the money back is very slim. It's a lotto ticket. So
Mhm.
and I was trying to be smart about that. So, and I was starting to settle down with my longtime girlfriend. I had aspirations of proposing to her, and having a family and that sort of thing. So money, being conscious about money was on my mind too. So I conceived this idea. I was like, okay, so what if I just spread that burden out, the filmmaking burden out over, you know, a handful of weeks, that where these productions took place in different years, so that that financial burden wasn't, one 40-week long, or sorry, 40-day long shoot that
Mhm.
cost, all at once, like 200, $300,000.
Yeah.
Um, and because I also run a video production business, like that's how I make my money. I do commercials, corporate stuff, like a lot of filmmakers do, right?
Mhm.
That stuff pays the bills. So uh, I was like, what if I did an anthology, right? And I leveraged these all these different ideas I'd had over the years involved with the region that I grew up in and loved. And but maybe some of these ideas I felt like couldn't be feature films. What
Mhm.
if I figured out a way to thread them all together, so that I could present them to the world as one, while at the same
Mhm.
time being financially smart, right? It's not a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting thing to talk about finances, right? But it is so tied to the creative process of indie filmmaking, whether we like it or not. Because
Mm.
unless you're obscenely rich, or you have a plug into the Hollywood system, or any of the bigger cities, where you have all these people willing to just chuck money at you. It's
Mm.
always a struggle, and it's what I would say probably the second hardest part of filmmaking is scrounging up the money to make the project. So that's really where it all, in a lot of words, I can be long winded sometimes, how it
Uh-huh.
all
Yeah.
kind of came together, right? It was two parts, trying to solve this money issue so that I could complete a vision for once, to a T, of the stories I wanted to tell. And secondarily, I had written all these stories, these short stories and short scripts uh, during the pandemic, that were inspired by the Driftless area where I'm from, that I thought it would be cool to figure out a way to package it all together so that a worldwide audience could one day, I could share these stories in this area with them. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, excellent. And there's not a problem with being long-winded, the less I have to talk, the better.
okay, all
That's,
right,
that's all good. So yeah, interesting you say like the Midwest and people is inside the US maybe not understanding it. My understanding of Iowa is Slipknot, and a friend of mine went to I cannot remember the university name. He was there for a soccer scholarship. Um, oh, what was the name of the university? I can't remember anyway. And so I had heard of it out with Slipknot as well. But uh, as you're saying, you need to be creative in terms of indie film making. You get some great locations in this, and as you said, it's to give that feel of your area. How did you go about finding these locations? Did you have to be creative? Was it asking favors of people's house, like using people's locations and things like that?
yeah. So one of the first kernels of the idea for one of these stories, specifically Papa Bait, which is the first like core story in the film, was this abandoned casino riverboat. Those used to be ubiquitous on the Mississippi River. There was basically laws on the books that you couldn't have casinos on land. So uh, being the people that we are, for better or worse, we circumvented those laws and put the casinos on the river, right?
Mm.
Because then that's not on the land, technically speaking, so they
Right.
can't be sued or litigated. So those don't exist anymore because, uh, for the most part, casinos, both regionally and elsewhere online and stuff, have mostly been legalized in the past 20
Mhm.
years in the United States. But like bouncing back a little bit, I've always lived by the Mississippi River, so I'm what you would call a little bit of a river rat, is what we call them, which is, you like to go out in the river and you like to have some beers. And my parents had a boat, and um, I've had a boat, and my friends have had boats, and it's just like what you do, during the 4 nice months that you get in Iowa, is you go out and on the river,
Mm.
and have fun. And a decade ago, I saw, tucked back in this area where they have a bunch of barges and other stuff kind of like stowed away and stored away in the harbor, this old dilapidated casino riverboat, the Catfish
Mm.
Bend, which is featured in Papa Bait. And I was like, wow, that would be so cool to just see what that looks like on the inside.
Mm.
Um, and furthermore, this is kind of how a lot of movies, especially indie movies, start. Wouldn't it be cool if we wrote a story and featured it in there, and got inside and did some scenes in there and filmed the movie in there? So
Mm.
that had been kicking around in my head for a while, and getting that location was probably one of the most difficult locations in the entire movie, from
Mm.
tracking down who actually owned the thing, to logistically how we were going to get on it,
Mm.
to the day of filmmaking and all of the challenges that arose that day. It was particularly windy. Uh, there was a barge that we had to pay a river company to move so that we could basically like jump onto the bar, not jump, but like ladder walk onto the barge, get the equipment down there, and then use another ladder and pulley system to get the equipment and cast and crew up in there for what amounted to 2 to 3 minutes of screen time, right? But it's
Yeah.
such an awesome location, and
Mm.
like we went through all the challenges, we overcame the challenges. Uh, but when I got onto that riverboat for the first time, I was like running, because they gave me this big key ring that had keys to, and they weren't sure like what worked with what. So I was like running around. This was like a couple days prior to shooting those scenes. Like, felt like I was in like a Silent Hill game or like a Resident Evil game. and just like figuring out like what key unlocked what door, and realizing like some of the things like, oh yeah, duh, like we're gonna need a generator and we're gonna need a porta potty because none of that stuff works here. And
Yeah.
we discovered a big old box of VHSs that were training VHSs for the dealers, the blackjack dealers, card dealers, the slot machine techs. Like it was just a gold mine of stuff.
Mm.
But yeah, it was challenging. I mean, all of these locations, when it comes from the renovated barn out in the cornfield, to
Mm.
the antique store, to the hotel pool, all of them had such unique challenges in getting them and finding them in the
Mm.
first place. I could go on and on about each individual one. Is there one in particular that you want to know the backstory behind too?
Just it was just, yeah, just kind of in general. But as you said, like, what was interesting was the pool one, because as you said, that's got that motel setting, which you would imagine wouldn't be an easy thing to get a hold of, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Uh,
Yeah.
it was fun though. So I wrote the pool keeper. It was the script that came together the quickest. We
Okay.
we Papa Bait, we probably shot draft 20. Booze, I think that was probably draft like 35 or 40. Pool keeper, we shot draft 2. Uh, it was a year before principal photography on the pool keeper, and I still have this notepad in my phone. I had this dream of a pool cleaner at night pulling weird things out of the pool.
Mm.
Uh, and that vision, I woke up and that vision stuck with me, and I started jotting down all these different ideas I had. I ended up like sitting there jotting down ideas for like 2 hours. Uh, the script came together like in the first draft came together in a week, and then I tweaked some things, and I think the shooting script was like ready, and like we were also confident in it like another week later. So
Mm.
it's it's tough. One of the things, talking about financial burdens of these projects, it's tough sometimes as a writer, director, producer, like wearing all the hats, to write
Mm.
something completely genuine without thinking about the constraints of how am I going to find this? How are we going to do this? Uh, from a monetary standpoint, or like how would I ever get access to a whole pool, or a whole hotel like wing for like an
Mm.
entire week of production, like shutting it down, like who would ever let us do that? And you know my mind, once I was done with the script, was like, yeah, we're never going to be able to shoot this. Like that would cost, like we'll have to rent out a whole hotel for a
Mm.
whole week, right? Like that's the only way they
Uh,
would do it, right?
yeah.
And uh, I got thinking about it a little bit more, and I got doing some research on some of the areas, and I was like, well, you know, I don't live in Chicago or New York or LA, so there's got to be a time on the calendar where a hotel would be historically vacant, right? They could look at their
Mhm.
books and be like, yeah, we normally do $3,000 or $4,000 worth of uh, guests, the week before Valentine's Day, right?
Mhm.
Which is the week we ended up shooting.
Okay.
And if I could guarantee them that same revenue for that week, well, why wouldn't they? Or like a little bit more. Why wouldn't
Yeah.
they just go with us and just take the guaranteed money versus like rolling the dice, right? So that was
Yeah.
like the thought that was like seeded into my head, that maybe this could happen with the right deal in the right place, in the right place too. I scouted probably 30 different hotels in within like 200 miles of me that had atriums that looked like they could work.
Mm.
And I started making phone calls and just cold calling people, and most of them just did not fundamentally understand like what the hell it is I wanted to do, right? Like they'd never
Yeah.
had someone be like, I want to rent out your hotel completely. Like I can't have anyone else, at least in a certain portion of it, that entire week. And they
Mm.
just, like a lot of people just couldn't wrap their brain around that. And I think they thought I was either crazy or they just didn't want to deal with the potential like headache, right?
Yeah.
Like they just want to deal with their weddings and their normal guests and that sort of thing. So at a certain point, I was getting a little disheartened. We were just getting firm no's. We were getting quotes that didn't reflect what I thought was the reality of the revenue I thought we could compete with.
Hmm.
And I was sitting with my buddy Cameron. It was we were watching American football some Sunday, and I was kind of just like shooting it with him and just being like, I just can't figure out this like hotel thing. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's not a filmmaker. He's just a buddy of mine, lives down the street from me, good neighbor of mine. And I was like, I looking for like an atrium, an indoor pool atrium that that we can basically take over for this script I have. It's I feel like it's one of the stronger scripts that I've written in recent memory, and it just feels like a location that is kind of like coming out of reach that I'm just gonna have to completely table it until I don't know, some later date, and it can't be a part of the anthology. I'll have to just rewrite, that portion and come up with something else to finish off the film. And he was like, "Have you looked at the Best Western up on Dodge Street?" It, and the Best Western up on Dodge Street is literally 5 minutes from my office.
Yeah.
And I said, "What are you talking about?" Because I thought, having lived here as long as I have, that I just was aware of all of the hotels and the but the fact of the matter was is I really wasn't, because why would I stay at any of these hotels, right? And
Yeah.
most of the people I had coming into town usually stay at the Julian, which is the other hotel, the like the fancier hotel, I guess, that
Mm.
older Nicholas stays at in the Pool Keeper. And I pulled it up my phone real quick, and it looked exactly like one of the pool atriums that I'd fallen in love with that was in Beloit, Wisconsin, I want to say, that where they quoted me like some ridiculous number, like it was like they wanted like 40 grand or something. It looked like the same like architects or something that had built it, or maybe there's just like one pool atrium building company, like, and it had just like the retro vibes. It looks like it's basically just been like retouched, repainted since new chairs and stuff since like the 70s or 80s or whatever. And then the next day, I just like walked in. It was empty. It was like a
Mhm.
Monday. No one was around. So no one like stopped me or anything. And I just walked right into the pool atrium and I just started taking pictures. And I was like, holy crap, like this could absolutely work. And
Yeah.
ultimately it did, with a lot of negotiations, a lot of Shannon, who's the head of marketing slash booking up there. She also didn't understand like what it was I truly wanted to do. I think maybe until we were like there, and she
Mm.
like the equipment started rolling in, right? And like started seeing like poking her eye on set and seeing some of the scenes and stuff. And I think she started to get it, like that it wasn't just people playing around with the camera, like it was like a real shoot, and we were trying to make something special. So
Mm.
yeah, it was absolutely one of the hardest locations to find. And there again, like my like hometown area just like coming through for me. um i've 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 said it like multiple times, all of my three features all take place in Dubuque. Um,
Mm,
or sorry, they were filmed in Dubuque for the most part. The
okay.
antique store was filmed like 2 hours west, but three feature films worth of material of just very very different locations. It's Dubuque in Iowa, eastern Iowa specifically, continues to be just this small but enormous sandbox for me
Mm,
as an indie filmmaker, being able to find the locations that I need and the people that own those locations that are willing to work with me and at least hear me out and
yeah.
have the discussions and make it happen. So kudos to all those location owners and people that thought I was crazy, but then came along for the ride and had a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, maybe you're a dog thumping about there. Excuse me. So you've mentioned the antique store, and I think what can kind of make or break an anthology is the sort of wraparound story. You've It's a really interesting approach you've had with it, with the basically the store owner telling tales, or what he says is he says everything's like everything in his store is real, and the stories he tells are real. How did the kind of thought process come for the wraparound? Has that always been there since the start for you? Because because I'm a big fan of anthologies. Like I watch all the VHS ones. Sometimes the VHS ones can potentially the wraparound doesn't isn't as strong as some of the earlier ones can be. So I've really enjoyed the way you kind of tied it all together with the antique store.
Thank you. Yeah. The most recent VHS ones, it's like just like taped over tape, right? And it's just like stuff like popping in. It's an interesting way to do it, but I kind of miss like the old VHSs where they had like these bigger overarching stories. Yeah, no,
Mm,
I mean, I beyond using the anthology mechanism to spread out the burden of production over the course of 3 years. I've always loved anthologies, whether it's a more recent uh, one like Trick or Treat. I love
mm,
Trick or Treat, or some older ones like Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Hood, Creep Show. Obviously, there's a lot of and also it's like it was always, for whatever reason, Tales from the Hood's wraparound tale always really stuck with me, where he turns to Satan at the end,
okay.
um, and I don't know. But yeah, so after shooting Papa Bait, that was the first story we shot uh, as kind of like a proof of concept that it could all work in terms of
Mm,
like like we didn't go over budget and like this rough cut's pretty dang good. I
mhm,
got this next script on deck, which was booze. I had the kernel of like how to bring everything together, right? Because antique stores are big out here, super
yeah,
big.
yeah,
There was uh, a reality TV show called American Pickers. Their like headquarters where they started doing that show is literally about 45 minutes south of here.
okay.
So you know, rolling up to an old antique store and just kind of like ruffling through the things and kind of seeing the stories, like that's always been kind of a big part of the Midwest. It's a big part of everywhere. Like, who doesn't like
Mm,
something that just looks like it's got stories to tell, right? In
mhm,
in in
yeah,
object form. So I always knew that I wanted the thread story to be uh, an antique store based, and that I
mhm,
wanted our mortician, so to speak, like Tales from the Hood that turns into Satan.
yeah,
uh, I wanted him to be the antique store owner, obviously telling these stories, because that's another thing too. If you go into an antique store and you ask a question about an object, like usually there's like kind of like a weird, outspoken person behind the counter that, oh, that's really cool. You know, they're kind of like juicing it up, right, to
Aye,
so they can make the sale, right?
absolutely.
Whatever it may be. So I thought that would just be a fun way to play with some of the more interesting props
Yeah.
that we were acquiring and building for the sub stories. So
Mhm.
yeah, it started. The kernel was always there, but it started evolving, especially when the sub stories became, you know, fully concrete. And obviously, we waited till last to shoot the thread story so that we could make sure that all our I's were dotted and T's were crossed as far as like all the general information regarding the sub stories, right?
Mhm. Cool.
And Tori,
So
the actor, uh, uh, the antique store owner who did a great job, Tori Hansen. He had like he's got a bunch of different smaller bit roles. He's a Chicago actor. He had like a bit role in the
mm,
remake for Candyman, and he was just in this big thriller drama series. The name is escaping me right now, but he was originally one of the top candidates for the pool keeper before
okay.
Jonathan Weir, who plays him in the movie, landed the role. And
Mm,
I was like really close to casting Tori for that part, and it didn't work out because he had just gotten this big network gig, and he was going to be tied up for like 6 months or something. So I'm glad
mhm.
that that's what happened though, because then we looked at the other, you know, I revisited Jonathan Weir's audition tape, and I was like, it just like, I was like, what was I not seeing before? Because this guy is perfect for it, like down to like
Mm,
the shaved head, and just like, you know, I was like, I, you know, could envision him in that blue jumpsuit. And but
mhm.
it worked out in the end because then I was able to cast Tori as the antique Al, and he brings so much life to that thread story. Like, you know, he's the
Yeah.
heart and soul of it, right?
Yeah.
He chose that scenery and did an amazing job. You know, that was just like a 4-day shoot, and we were, you know, basically just in one building the entire time. But all those actors did such a good job with that thread story, and we had so much fun,
Mm,
especially with like the the climax of the thread story. So
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, it works really well, and as I said, it brings it all together really well. The Tory just, I think I can't imagine him as the pool keeper, as you said, because just that kind of switch now, wouldn't, because the pool keeper's so intimidating, and Tory does have not intimidation feel about him, but maybe a kind of mysterious feel. Whereas the pool keeper seems that was an intense character, um, just making that one motion, and it was quite it was a great choice, and I thoroughly enjoyed the wraparound. Just to kind of wrapping up a wee bit, but for your, obviously you've spoken your love of the anthology series. Is this something that you can see yourself delving into again, making these types of stories, going anthology? Is it something you enjoyed that you would like to revisit?
yeah, I mean, it was so a couple things. It was a, having not done an anthology. I've done short films before,
Hmm.
um, but having not done an anthology, it was very refreshing to not spend like years of my life on one story, right?
Yeah.
Um, these features, especially at the indie, the micro indie level, like, sub 250,000, are they take years and years and years and years and years from conception to what we're staring down the barrel right here, which is the world premiere at Grimmfest, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
it was refreshing to get to work with so many different talented cast um, and I can't wait, if we're so lucky to get the majority of the cast like in one room for one of these screenings, wherever it ends
Mm,
up being, because so many of them don't know like the or aren't familiar in total with the other sub stories, because they just heard me like give them kind of like the dirty pitch of the whole deal versus like reading the scripts or whatever. So it would be
yeah,
so cool to get, because there's just so many talented people. Like it's rare on a feature do you get to work with that many cast and crew on one feature,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and that many leads too. And one of my favorite parts of the process is just working with an actor on set, working on blocking, trusting them and them trusting me, and just going to work. So that was a rewarding part of the process, was being able to uh, spread that across some time, and work with so many people. Would I do it again? Yeah, totally. My intention isn't to immediately do it again. I am
hmm
writing a fourth feature right now that I would love for it to be my fourth feature if I'm so lucky. But again, a lot of challenges around that one. So if someone was like, saw the film at one of these film festivals, and said like, hey, I'm ready to bankroll the Driftless 2, like, do you have stories ready? Like, yes, I absolutely have treatments for the Driftless 2, if we were ever to be that lucky, right, that
hmm
someone saw it and wanted to bankroll the production of the next one. So
yeah,
um, yeah, no, it was a fun thing, and I think you know there's already a huge ravenous subsect of horror fans that specifically seek out anthologies, and I think it's only going to get bigger because of people's attention spans, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
You can dip in and out, sort of thing.
yeah, and I'll tell you just another thing too. A while ago we had a test screening for people just close to the project, and a lot of the people didn't work on all of the different parts of the film. Like we couldn't bring the same crew or whatever. And then also just a close friends and family wanted to get some feedback as we were kind of like finishing up the film and stuff. And it was so rewarding to hear what everyone's favorite part was, and I that was like
Mm,
unexpected to me, because
yeah,
usually when you do one of these movies or one of these features, everyone's just talking about the same story, and everyone's got a different opinion about the same story. Whereas with the anthology, everyone had a different favorite story, right? And the reason why it was their favorite was different. So that was super cool to hear. Uh, People who worked on it or not discuss that. So I'm very excited to take it out on the festival circuit, to Grimmfest, obviously, and the other film fests that we have lined up, and just hear that as well.
mhm,
So, yeah, I absolutely would work in the space again if the opportunity arises.
perfect. Yeah, you said it's shown at Grimmfest on the Saturday, the 11th of October at 10:25. Um, are you making it over for it? Are you coming over?
Yep. Me and my wife are coming over for it. It's only the second time I've been in the UK. We had our international premiere for my second feature, Death to Metal, at the Soho Horror International Film Festival in London back in December. I think it was actually November of 2019. And Mitch puts on a good festival over there.
Mm,
Mitch Herod. So yeah, me and my wife are making it over. It's the first time both of us will have been away from our son, who is one years old.
oh,
So that'll be interesting and exciting. But and I
mm,
also have some friends that are making the journey too. So that's pretty fun as well. We're also in a film festival that is taking place like right after in the States. called
Mhm.
the Erie Horror Fest in Erie,
Oh,
Pennsylvania, and
oh, yeah.
we have people from the film also making it over to that too. Our director of photography, Jackson Gango, one of my co-producers, Samantha Seahawk, and our composer Gregory Polzak are making it over for that one. So we're trying to travel to as many as we can. Uh,
Yeah.
for me, as a audience member going to film festivals, the thing I love the most is getting to interact and ask questions with the
Mhm.
filmmakers. So if I didn't do my best to make it to every festival that I can make it to like return that favor, then I'd just be a hypocrite. So we're trying to get to everyone that we can, big or small. Uh, we're gonna try and make it happen. So and flights are booked, hotels booked. We're gonna be in Manchester in exactly 2 weeks.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with it. I think an anthology will play really well at a festival, I think, as well. So I'm sure you'll be looking forward to it. And Manchester's also a great city, so
I'm
plenty of
excited.
good food,
I'm excited.
plenty of good pubs.
Good,
Aye,
good.
it's been a while since I've been, but it is a great city, so I'm sure you have a great time. Again, Tim, thanks very much for your time today. I say good luck at Grimmfest and keep in touch with whatever you've got coming up next for us as well.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate your time and thanks for the questions and thanks for giving the movie a watch. So great. Cheers.